How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It's the year 2025, and we are back with a brand new volume of the Cinema Chronicles on Nashville Movie Dispatch. I'm your host, Brandon Vick. I'm a member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association and a board member of the Music City Film Critics Association. And Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you and yours. I don't know, I think a lot of people in this country are getting snow. Us lucky Tennesseans got some a week or two ago. So we've been playing in the snow. Nobody's been able to get out of their houses. I think one of my favorite snow day activities is sitting by my window, drinking a hot cup of joe, watching my neighbors try and get out of their driveway in their car. And then when they start spinning and hit their mailboxes and hit their wives, it's really fun. So we always look forward to the snow. And I'm excited about 2025. Nashville Movie Dispatch launched last month, and things are looking pretty good. So I'm excited what this year brings. Still got our movie book, if anybody is wanting to check that out. I think it's 135 films that are reviewed and rated, and so and it's got some exclusive stuff in there that the EIC Stoney wrote. It's got some top 10 lists, and hopefully, if everybody's been enjoying. I've started releasing my best of 2024. I think last week was best performances and directing, best documentaries, and of course I've got those good old stinkers too list. So check all that out on Nashville Movie Dispatch. And see, today is Monday, so Wednesday, my best movies of 2024 is coming out, so you can read that on Nashville Movie Dispatch on Wednesday. Let's see if there's anything else I want to plug. I recently bought Post Malone's country album. So that's fun. It's got Chris Stapleton and Dolly Parton in it. And that's about it. We had a nice Christmas. A very boring New Year's, but we liked it. We had we watched Only Murders in the Building and put on face masks and had wine. So that's how we partied. But yeah, so hopefully everybody's kicking this new year off right. And I guess that's about it. You know, once New Year's is over, there's just shit ain't going on anytime, really. I've seen a few movies, which I'm here to talk to you about, at least the three main ones. But there are some good movies coming out next month that I'm kind of looking forward to. And then there's one at the end of this month, Companion, from the folks that brought you Barbarian. So I'm kind of looking forward to that one. But yeah, next month is Love Hurts, which is like an action movie. And we got a big old MCU movie. MCU's back with Captain America, Brave New World. I think Harrison Ford's in it as the Winter Soldier. So that looks cool. But yeah, so I'm excited. So you know what? Enough about that. I've told you what to look forward to, and I've told you about a little bit about my life. That's contractually, that's all I have to say. So let's get things started with the latest iteration of the Wolfman. How? Coming up next. Per Rotten Tomatoes, Christopher Abbott, who you might know from Poor Things and It Comes at Night, stars as Blake, a San Francisco husband and father who inherits his remote childhood home in rural Oregon after his own father vanishes and is presumed dead. With his marriage to his high-powered wife Charlotte, played by Julia Garner from Ozark, fraying, Blake persuades Charlotte to take a break from the city and visit the property with their young daughter Ginger. But as the family approaches the farmhouse in the dead of night, they're attacked by an unseen animal and in a desperate escape, barricade themselves inside the home as the creature prowls the perimeter. As the night stretches on, however, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable. And Charlotte will be forced to decide whether the terror within their house is more lethal than the danger without. I'll be honest, before I get to this movie, when I first read that, it reminded me when we first moved into our house and I got in a fight with a possum outside. So, writer-director Leigh Whannell, his follow-up from The Invisible Man, is yet another modern take on a classic Universal monster tale that will have audiences howling less at the moon and more like yawning in your seat. Forget the full moon and everything else that comes with the werewolf lore. This ain't that kind of werewolf movie. Per discussing film, Whannell brings the Universal monsters back into the spotlight with Wolfman. Whannell is quoted in saying, "We've all seen a man transform into a beast under the moonlight. It's a shared image of our collective cultural consciousness. To me, the horrors of Wolfman lie in the infection. In modernizing the werewolf, I didn't want to make it about a curse or anything mystical. In our post-pandemic world, the proximity to people in our own homes who can be ill with a dangerous sickness is what was most interesting to me. So I don't want people to walk in expecting the usual or a complete homage. You can take all these classic monsters and wrap them around different concepts to modernize them. And this way, Wolfman has much more of an infection angle." So we'll get to the transformation part in a minute. But as far as Wolfman, with its lackluster narrative, and honestly, there's no real scares, the movie is unable to enthrall or engagingly explore its themes that's centered around child trauma and the protection a parent is supposed to provide. The script also doesn't do the Wolfman any favors. Nevertheless, Abbott and Garner do what they can to bring some level of emotion and suspense. Fantastic sound work and splendid visual and practical effects do hold your attention the most. The transformation is a pivotal part in these werewolf movies. And I must say, this one actually does it quite well. It looks great and gross, and the inspiration that's drawn from movies like The Fly and The Thing is undeniable when it does come to the transformation and the body horror that's involved. Excuse me. Continuing from that same piece by discussing film, it says practical effects were an absolute must for this interpretation. I didn't want to break that tradition that goes all the way back to Lon Chaney, states Whannell, but there have been plenty of great versions of the Wolfman across cinema history. In his own words, you can't compete with Rick Baker, and you can't compete with Jack Pierce either. Thus, the solution was to aim for a look that had never been attempted before. He continues, rather than trying to outdo or build upon what has already been done in the past, I tried to do something singular where people could say, "Oh, I've never seen that version before," the director says. When writing the screenplay during lockdown, it only made sense for this version of the Wolfman to look sickly and more diseased, as if it were a werewolf virus rather than a curse. Working closely with makeup artist Arjan Tuin, let's just go with that. is actually the makeup artist that was on Maleficent and Pan's Labyrinth. Wanell wanted to create a unique design that would leave people speechless. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of what this Wolfman is. Clearly, it's not the ones that we've seen or maybe that you're expecting in this one. I would say that the final look won't really leave people speechless, as Wanell was hoping. More than most will probably leave disappointed, considering the wolf side is nowhere near as dominant as these previous versions that have been told. As mentioned before, Wanell wanted to go in a different direction, but I mean, come on. Wolfman, I think we're all in agreement here, has to be more beast than human. I think avoiding it in the name of, air quotes, modernizing ain't good for horror. Physically and psychologically, it was easy to see that Wanell ripped into both with social relevance and mounting intention in his last film, The Invisible Man. Staying in touch with its classic H.G. Wells roots, he brought to life a marvelous modern-day monster movie that's clever, chilling, and was conscious of its themes and message. And with Wolfman, that's just not the case. In many aspects, Wanell feels like he's kind of abandoned a lot of that for something that's much more simple and sluggish. It has a wearisome narrative with not much emotional weight. There's no real character depth. There's some pretty lame dialogue within the movie. At times, it's poorly lit. There are scenes where I just looks like people are just, I don't know if they're running, if they're jumping, playing chess, painting their faces. It's so dark, you can't even see what's going on. And it's not as scary nor as gory as a Wolfman movie should be. However, it does have some dedicated performances. The look of the werewolf transformation body horror that I talked about earlier is great and grotesque. And it really nails the sound design, which inarguably enhances the viewing experience. So with a lot of movies, we just have to take the good with the bad. Wanell tried something different, and the results are, more than anything, I think they're just frustrating, though it's not a total disaster, which is why if he tries his hand at this whole universal monster thing again, I'll be there in the theater to see what he does with it. Don't forget, we've got a Werewolves podcast that you can check out on Nashville Movie Dispatch. It kind of goes into these previous movies that have depicted this classic furry beast. But as far as 2025's Wolfman, it gets a VixFlix rating of 2.5 out of 5. And coming up next, we're going to talk about Gerard Butler being a big old sleazebag. And I like it. Den of Thieves, Pantera. We're going back to Rotten Tomatoes for this one. Gerard Butler and O'Shea Jackson Jr. return in the sequel to 2018's action heist hit Den of Thieves. Big Nick Butler is back on the hunt in Europe and closing in on Donnie, played by Jackson, who is embroiled in the treacherous and unpredictable world of diamond thieves and the infamous Panther Mafia as they plot a massive heist of the world's largest diamond exchange. The first one is a cops and robbers heist thriller that has a ton of brawn and surprisingly a brain as well. It pisses on plausibility, but there's good fun in witnessing the setup and fall of a plan. The energy never lets up, and the action is paced just right to feed our need. I say that about the first one because, though while Den of Thieves 2 is more easygoing and not as action-packed, it still surprises by being a solid sequel that no one was really asking for. I'm pretty sure it wasn't in high demand like, a Nice Guys sequel. Anyway, Den of Thieves 2 spends much of its 2-hour and 24-minute runtime broing out and prepping and planning for the big diamond heist. However, maybe Maybe. It was just saving its energy for when the actual heist takes place, because things do pick up as the plan goes into action, and it's certainly the best part of the entire movie. I mean, let's face it, it's what we're basically been waiting for. And like with the first one, if you're wanting a twist, then you get it, but I can't say it'll shock you this time around. This is via Variety, that as an interview with O'Shea Jackson Jr., and they ask, you learn more about both Donnie and Big Nick in this movie. How did you develop who Donnie was beyond the script? Jackson says, the beauty of our sequel is that we have a completely different dynamic than the first film. So while fans of the first one are getting the same characters, you're also getting different versions of those characters. When he came to Donnie, I knew that the audience knows he's a guy who can come up with a plan to rob the Federal Reserve of L.A., which that's what happened in the first one, and get off scot-free. So it was about showing this chameleon who is precise, completely measured, and focused, because he knows one slip up and it's over. Instead of being the timid, unsure guy from the first one, I had to show the alpha that he could be. Usually actors will go the route of studying other performances or maybe even reading books on the subject. I'd watched a bunch of Kobe Bryant and John Jones videos. These are people that I know are so measured in what they do, so deadly serious. It's exactly what you want from a leader when you see John Jones in combat in the middle of an octagon. When you look at Kobe at the first tip-off, he's locked in, not blinking. You know the Mamba's fangs are out. It's what I had to do for this new version of Donnie. That is, until, like always, Gerard Butler throws a wrench in my plans. So that's a little bit as far as what kind of Jackson brought to the sequel. He's good in this one. He was good in the first one. Obviously, they're trying to explore a little more, trying to give you a bit more depth into kind of what was hinted at in the first one, trying to give you more in this one. But I really do think it's tough to compete with Big Nick. Butler has been, first of all, Butler's been in some sneaky good movies over the past few years that I bet many of you have probably skipped. Greenland and Cop Shop instantly come to mind. But in what quite possibly could be Butler's best character, Big Nick is back, and this cop has gone gangsta. You can practically smell the cigarettes and whiskey seeping out of his pores, and I dig it. His and Jackson's chemistry play a way bigger part in this one, and they bounce off each other pretty well, feeling like an entertaining buddy comedy at times. Speaking of Butler, they're talking about where this is, per Entertainment Weekly, that he shot Den of Thieves 2 on a freshly torn ACL. Says if Gerard Butler's on-screen pain looks especially convincing in Den of Thieves 2, there's good reason. Turns out the Scottish actor essentially shot the entire action-packed heist sequel on one leg. He says, this was a weird time for me at the beginning of this movie because I'd been through a pretty intense surgery, and then I tore my ACL fully about a month later and then started this movie, Butler tells Entertainment Weekly. So I was not in the best shape, and it was a pretty physical movie, and I didn't have a chance to get the surgery on my ACL. So I made this movie with a freshly torn ACL, and it was pretty rough. And then he says, but yeah, I wanted to put a but in to make it sound positive, but it wasn't positive. It was a nightmare. He continues before joking, and I was a whiny little bitch. First of all, my God, what a man. Second of all, my God, what a man. In the end, these Den of Thieves movies is dirtbag, sleazy cinema at its finest. Number 2 may not be as exciting as it can't really compare to the thrills of the first one. More so, it just ain't bolstering that same sort of bravado that its predecessor thrived on. But Butler plays a brazen bastard who's fun to watch, and if there's one thing that truly fascinated me is that writer-director Christian Gudegast, switching gears here to somewhat show how alluring it is to play for the other team and how you can get so totally lost in it. I think that's probably the most intriguing element of it all. But listen, a Den of Thieves 3, you know what? I'd see it. My VixFlix rating for Den of Thieves Pantera is 2.5 out of 5. and we're going to come back with Steven Soderbergh's spooky movie with Goose. Guess where we're going? Back to Rotten Tomatoes. Says a family moves into a suburban house and becomes convinced they are not alone. This movie, Presence, stars Lucy Liu, Chris Sullivan, and Julia Fox is in it. I think a lot of her probably know her in Uncut Gems. I just want to tell you, do not think she has a huge part. She is literally the real estate agent, and she's in it for maybe the first 3 minutes, and then you never see her again. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. This is Presence is told from the perspective of a spiritual entity, and this is Steven Soderbergh's ingenious and intimate, though familiar, ghost story that slowly evolves into actually quite an effective human story, even if the script pulls it back at times, of a family barely hanging on, leaving us with more questions than answers. There is an LA Times piece as far as like how the film came about, which I found interesting. The title was Steven Soderbergh decided to make a ghost story. He also wanted to play the ghost. It says a few years ago, there was a ghost in Steven Soderbergh's LA home. One evening while a friend was cat-sitting for the filmmaker and his wife, Jules Asner, she saw someone or something walk from the bathroom into the bedroom, even though no one else was home. Soderbergh and Asner later discovered that a woman died in the house in the late 1980s, apparently from suicide. It was this experience that led Soderbergh to make Presence, and that has actually unexpectedly become one of his most personal efforts to date. Soderbergh says, we called our ghost Mimi. He says, it got me thinking about how Mimi would feel about us being in her house, as Mimi pissed at us living here. And then it goes on to say, although Soderbergh himself never encountered Mimi, she became an inspiration. Presence marks the filmmaker's second collaboration with screenwriter David Coop. He also wrote Soderbergh's 2022's Kimi, that had Zoe Kravitz, as well as Marge's Black Bag, which is another Soderbergh movie that's coming out. The story, influenced loosely by the 1944 classic The Uninvited, draws on the grand tradition of haunted house movies. Strikingly, though, the camera, operated by Soderbergh himself. Fun fact, he goes under the alias Peter Andrews for cinematographer, but he actually shoots his own stuff. So there's that. But takes on the perspective of the spirit throughout the movie. The viewer sees what the ghost sees, an unusual approach to the genre that pays off in a third act twist. Soderbergh goes on to talk about his ghost's eye view approach working and how long he could get away with it. He's clearly aware of the game he's playing, because these type of gimmicks we've seen in all kinds of genres can certainly wear out its welcome in a hurry. But that's not really the case with Presence. From the same LA Times piece, the only concern as a director was, if this doesn't work, there's no plan B, Soderbergh admits. I can't fix it later. The conceit either needs to work or the movie doesn't work. But I felt pretty confident that it would. We talked about how the idea of this gimmick is only sustainable for a certain amount of time before it's got to resolve itself, and we felt 90 minutes was a good target. And part of the fun of it was the audience really has to pay attention. You've got to create the context based on the clues we're dropping. Solid performances and technical prowess leave more of a mark than the haunted house narrative, and the prior mention of the third act twist. There's one in particular that seems rather sudden and could have been handled better leading up to it, in my opinion. You can't help but feel these shockers are kind of the main reason why this entire concept was created, but it sounds like I would be wrong. Going back into the LA Times article, says, I gave David a few pages of setup, an empty house with something in it. The camera moves at eye height like a person. A realtor shows the house to a family. Like, do something with that. He built it out from there, talking about David's screenwriter, including the ending, which I didn't have. Soderbergh says, I had an idea of who the presence might be, but he surprised me. So the whole time you're watching Presence, you're thinking, who is the one watching them and why? And you do get your answer to these, even if it doesn't quite make total sense. There is a character thrown in whose sole purpose, honestly, is to give you a few of those clues that Soderbergh mentioned to help explain this big reveal in those in the last few seconds. And that's about all you really get. Trying to connect everything at the end has its struggles, that's for sure. But at the same time, I do think the choice made by Coop on who the ghost is at least fairly successful, as it does have you go back and think about what you had watched for kind of that past, an hour and 20-something minutes, with certain scenes taking on new meaning. Back to the LA Times piece, it says, Presence is a ghost story, but the supernatural element is not meant to frighten. Instead, it's a way to understand a disconnected couple, Rebecca, who's Lucy Liu, and Chris, played by Chris Sullivan, and their teenage children, Coe, played by Carolina Leung, and Tyler, Eddie Mayday. Something is amiss between the parents, although it's never fully clear what, and Tyler, desperate to be accepted at school, bullies his sister Chloe, who is grieving the death of her best friend. Soderbergh describes his choice of the horror genre as a Trojan horse in which the ghostly element acts to reveal a family under duress and in danger of coming apart. So let that be your warning. It's a warning that Presence isn't Soderbergh's plunge into horror. There are a few creepy moments, but this is by no means a terrifying, spine-tingling film, but it is a deft, lean, and slow-burning supernatural drama from a fascinating filmmaker who knows no bounds. Presence, that just came out this past Friday, is getting a VixFlix rating of 3 out of 5. And that wraps up the Cinema Chronicles on Nashville Movie Dispatch. This is volume 25, the first of 2025. And if you want, check out my best of 2024 stuff. Best movies of 2024 will be out Wednesday. Check out all of our work for Nashville Movie Dispatch on Substack and search for Nashville Movie Dispatch wherever you get your podcasts. And until then, just go see a damn movie. Oh.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.